What's up, family? Follow him over here, and we're going to continue talking about Batman v Superman in much more detail. So if you haven't guessed already, this video is going to be full of spoilers. So if you want to avoid spoilers, be sure to check out my non-spoiler review, which is already posted. I'll put the link somewhere in here. So anyway, if you haven't seen it, you look at that review. But if you don't mind to get it spoiled, by all means, watch to your heart's content. But at this point, it's no longer my fault. You've been warned. Small disclaimer, people, there are going to be a lot of hows and whys in this review. Yeah, there are, Marv, but I'm going to be fair. I'm going to mention some good stuff in this movie as well as the bad that I've witnessed, but overall, the primary focus on this review is going to be the stuff that people had major gripes with, along with some of the good. But, you know, whatever, I'm going to be fair. Anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about Batman v Superman. Oh, you mean Batman vs. Superman featuring Wonder Woman, also special guest appearances by every key member of the Justice League with some crowbarred in Darkseid references? Marv, slow your roll. We haven't even gotten to that part yet. Well, Marv, you already know that patience isn't one of my strong suits, so get to getting. All right. Damn. So before I get started saying anything about this movie, I just want to point out one key factor, and that is Lex Luthor had everything planned. Keep that in mind. So literally for about 2 or 3 minutes, maybe even 4, we have to go through this whole sequence showing Bruce reliving his whole traumatic childhood with his parents getting killed again. And I understand this is introducing Batman into this cinematic universe. I get they kind of have to do it, but my only gripe with it is that it just really felt like it was just in your face, and it was just long and drawn out. You have to like feel every single tension of Bruce watching his parents get killed. It's almost to the point where it's almost like you have to reach out like it's your mother and father getting gunned down. Like, it was literally that serious. But again, I understand that it's supposed to propel Batman's motivation in introducing him into this universe. So again, that's a minor gripe. It's not a big one. So I'm just saying that's what you have to look forward to when this movie starts. So by the end of this sequence, it gets kind of metaphysical when, you know, young Bruce starts getting carried up by a swarm of bats. So it's kind of getting a little strange, but then that's when you realize that Bruce is just narrating a dream of him reliving this whole thing. Keep in mind, there's this ongoing thing with Bruce in his dreams in this movie, so just don't ever forget that. Like, that's gonna come up in a big way later on in this review. He was thinking about his mom, he thinking about his dad, he thinking about bullets, he thinking about bats. Open your eyes, yeah, it was all just Bruce's dream. Marv, was that really necessary? Extremely. So anyway, we get to the next sequence where they show Bruce in Metropolis when the whole thing with Superman and Zod's fight is going down and everything is getting thrashed to hell. And it's a pretty cool scene. It's setting up everything that we need to know about what's going to happen later in the movie. It's showing from Bruce's eyes and all this other stuff that's going on, and it's cool. It's a really cool sequence. There's a particular side character that they show who was an employee of Wayne Enterprises, and Bruce saves the guy because his legs are crushed under some fallen debris from Wayne Enterprises. And his role kind of comes up as a significant factor like later on in the movie. So we're gonna bring him up a little bit later, but just keep that in mind. So that scene ends, and then it comes to present day, roughly about 2 years later, and it opens up to somewhere with very clear water, and they just show this group of kids like diving underwater, which looks like some type of debris from the Kryptonian ship that was in Man of Steel. These kids wind up finding a block of kryptonite, and they bring it back to this man on shore. And apparently these guys, I'm assuming, work for LexCorp. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, why are they sending kids to retrieve kryptonite? Like, the only thing I can come up with is maybe they're just using the kids as cannon fodder just in case something goes wrong with them retrieving it. But, you know, I mean, I would have just had them just use trained scuba divers, but I mean, hey, whatever. One of the many questions you'll end up having with this movie. Yeah, a lot more questions than answers. So the next scene they show is Lois landing somewhere in Africa, and her camera guy, I guess, is supposed to interview some kind of warlord there. I'm not really sure what the whole purpose is, but apparently this kind of sets up some events that are, again, something that comes into fruition a little later. I'm gonna try to give you just a quick rundown because there's a lot of stuff that kind of happens, and I just want to get to the point where I really want to talk about. But anyway, here we go. So Lois and her cameraman get there, and she meets with the African warlord guy, and there's some other guys, mercenaries or whatever, that's dressed in black gear or whatever or something, and apparently those guys are contracted to the warlord and his people. And her cameraman, I think, was undercover CIA agent, because they found a tracker in his camera, which they found, so they killed him. And then the warlord guy takes Lois into his bunker, which I'm assuming he's trying to hold her hostage. And then they exchange words. Then the guys in black start killing the warlord's guys, and then the warlord guy gets spooked, and then he picks up Lois and then holds a gun to her head. And it just, I'm like, okay, this is picking up fast. What's gonna happen next? And a few moments later, you start hearing some rumblings in the sky, and Superman is on his way to save Lois. Now I'm gonna explain why this scene is kind of interesting. So Superman comes down, and he sees the warlord guy with the gun to Lois's head, and he's giving him this look like, bruh, you don't want to do that. And the warlord guy is holding her tighter, and he's panicking. He's like, don't come any closer. And that is when Superman gives Lois like this signaling look like, you ready? And she nods yes. And again, the warlord guy has her like this with the gun to her head, and Lois has her hands up here like this or whatever. So after she nods, she puts her hands down. And then a second later, Superman takes off with the guy through a brick wall that they were standing in front of. And I'm sitting there looking like, whoa, that guy is dead. FM, I'm thinking the word you're looking for is missed. I believe so, Marv, because if you look at that scene, at the velocity that Superman took off, they went through a brick wall. This is Superman and a normal man. There's no way that guy lived. Now, what's also interesting about this is that Lois put her hands down, but the warlord guy still had his arm around her neck with the gun. So unless Superman was moving at the speed of light, where he removed the hand first and then pretty much gored him through the wall, damn, he should have took Lois with him, like, because at that velocity, like, her neck should have been gone, because that was like really fast. And again, as far as I'm concerned, Superman killed that guy. So sometime later, they start showing like those congressional meetings that you've seen in the trailers. They start going through this whole thing with discussing, you know, Superman's ability and all this stuff that happened. And, you know, obviously asking the important questions. Okay, is this guy really good for the US and all that or whatever? And the thing is that that event that happened in Africa with the guys getting killed and all that, they kind of revealed later that Superman was to blame for those guys getting killed, or he was responsible for those guys getting killed. And it kind of left me scratching my head, because again, those mercenaries shot the warlord's guys. Superman doesn't use guns. And the thing is, they never present any evidence to say why they assumed Superman was the one that killed him. They had witnesses saying like, oh, it happened so fast, but just so many people died. And I'm thinking like, did you guys show bodies burned or fire set to a nearby village? I mean, what's going on? Like, how, like, y'all just assuming Superman is going around just shooting people? Like, I'm confused. Too many questions. Too many questions. Then we finally get introduced to Lex Luthor, played by Jesse Eisenberg, and his performance, I mean, it was okay at first, but like he just really just had like this really awkwardness about him to just kind of made you a little unnerving. It's just, I mean, I'm going to explain about his performance later, but I'm just going to talk about the plot for right now. So he goes to the senator trying to convince her of his opinion about Superman, about how dangerous he is and, you know, all this destruction he could bring. And then he brings up the kryptonite that his people found and, you know, letting her know that, like, you know, we need to get this over to the US and weaponize it and all this, that, and the other, because she has the ability to, I guess, lift the international trade block thing for him to bring it in. And she decides not to because, you know, she wants to get to the bottom of it. She doesn't want to make things worse. So she ultimately blocks the whole trade thing for him. And of course, that motivates him to just take matters in his own hands and all this, that, and the other. So yeah, that's pretty much how that starts. Then of course we eventually find out that those mercenary guys were contracted by Lex. Like, you don't find that out at this point in the movie, but at this point it's kind of apparent because at this point you can tell that Superman is kind of getting set up. So then they start going through this whole montage with Lex and kind of asserting his influence and getting access to the Kryptonian ship that they recovered in Metropolis and getting access to Zod's body. And the thing is that he has like this really weird way of requesting it because he's opening up like, you know, some Jolly Ranchers and eating them, and then the guy was just like so uncomfortable. Like, the guy he was talking to, he literally takes a Jolly Rancher and puts it in this man's mouth while he was requesting this stuff, and just what? At this point, this guy's character's creep factor goes from 0 to 60 really fast, and it never stops. Like, Jesse Eisenberg's overall performance as Lex, as this version of Lex, and the thing is, I'm gonna get to like his actual name because they kind of throw some stuff off, but for now, like, his performance, it's like, the only way I can describe it is it's a combination of Jim Carrey's Riddler and Nicolas Cage from Face Off. It's like he has like these weird way of trying to be funny, and then he be having like these little like just fits and stuff where he just like and just trying to, it's just like, I'm like, okay, it's really weird because the fact that they have his character being so over the top, it kind of goes against this whole like feeling of realism that they're trying to put into the characterizations of Batman and Superman in the world that surrounds them. They really had him acting like the classic villain in this movie, to be honest. Like, really campy, really cartoony, and just creepy. And there's one part when Lex was in her interview and he was saying how, you know, my father's also name is Lex or something to that effect. And he said, like, you know, instead of putting the Luthor, put the Lex Corp in front of the Corp and all that. I mean, I don't know if, I'm assuming that's their way of trying to say that he's not the original Lex, like Lex Jr. or something. They can easily go over somebody's head. Like, you're not gonna catch that right away because that's the only time they ever mention it. Still, it would have been nice if they were more clear. About as clear as some of the other stuff that we're still waiting to talk about. Marv, you're getting a little bit too excited. I'm gonna have to ask you to calm down. Now, one of the things I made clear in my other review is one of the best things about this movie was probably Ben Affleck as Batman. Like, they really did a good job at like his costume design, the way he acted, you know, the Bruce Wayne part he had down really good. And it was great. It was really great for the most part. But it's just some things that go down in the movie that like aren't very well explained. And I'm going to break down why. Now, they go on in the movie about how they say that Superman was supposed to be responsible for all these people's deaths, that he killed this person, you know, even him being set up for the people in Africa and all that. You know, everybody's concerned that, oh, like Superman, you know, he's a potential murderer and all that. But they mention that, but they never mention Batman's body count in this movie. Yes, people, you heard that right. Batman has a body count. Yeah, Zack Snyder apparently has taken a page from Tim Burton's book and pretty much thrown the moral code for Batman out the window. Now, for the most part, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with change. But it would have made sense that you're introducing this character. It will make some more sense that people would at least bring some attention to that. Like, Alfred never brings it up, like the media never brings it up. I mean, if Batman is laying waste to criminals in the street or whatever, you think people would bring that to folks' attention. He's taking people out with a 50 cal, cars are blowing up like from the gunfire, and he's crushing people in the Batmobile. Like he's racking up a body count in this movie. Just say it how it is. The man's a mass murderer. Another thing about Batman is that he's actually branding people. He has this thing in the shape of a bat that heats up, and he literally brands the criminals he beats the holy living hell out of. And I'm thinking like, whoa, that's pretty hardcore for Batman shit. But that's not even the best part about it. Apparently, when you brand these criminals and they go to jail, they get killed. They explain this in the movie. Whenever the Batman brands somebody and they go to jail and they see that brand on them, they are pretty much marked for death when they go to prison. So I'm thinking like, damn, bruh, really? I'm just saying, give us some kind of foresight as to why Batman is this hardcore of a dude. I mean, you might as well call this dude the Bat Punisher at this point. Haha, Bat Pun. That's funny. It just would have been nice if they just would have explained why. Like, you can't just leave it up to the audience like, oh, he saw Robin's outfit spray painted by the Joker, so that must be the reason why he decided to just kill people. Just would have been nice for them to bring attention to it, that's all I'm saying. So they show a part where Bruce is visiting his parents' crypt, which I'm assuming is somewhere on his property. And it's apparent that he's dreaming because they start showing blood leak out of his father's crypt, which transitions to a horrifying jump scare with a giant bat monster bursting through his father's crypt and biting Bruce, and him just waking up. And again, it's this ongoing theme where Batman is having these horrific dreams, basically further establishing that Batman is a messed up human being.
Uh-oh. It appears our friends Fallen Marvel and Marv are having trouble with this review. It seems they have bitten off more than they can chew solving this puzzle that is Batman v Superman. Will they overcome the lack of explanation and character motives? Or will they reach their wits' end and just surrender? Find out on the next exciting episode of Fallen Marvel Review.